speaking of that guy, Donald Trump, who has infected every element of our lives and is constantly giving us anxiety, I mean, we try to alleviate it a little bit with mockery, but the images that they're coming out here of this Fort Bragg speech are a bit concerning. I feel like if you've been paying attention to politics long enough, you'll see why this is very atypical, right? It's not a shock that that in most countries in the world, military personnel sometimes lean right wing. And that's why you can have elements like in Ukraine, like the Azov battalion, that have right-wing views, but that is often used as like a right-wing justification here to cut off arms to Ukraine. It's not necessarily, I think, the strongest footing to put your argument on. But Trump is going a step further and inflaming the politicization of our armed services. Like, maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but it doesn't make me feel super comfortable to see uniformed troops cheering on explicitly political speeches, especially when those speeches are fascistic in nature. And there should be some confidence in our society that our military is not going to be politicized in this manner, and that it's going to put its oath to the Constitution over the political movement of the commander-in-chief at one point. But Trump is actively trying to undercut that notion. So on Saturday, it's his birthday. It's not even the exact alignment of the 250th anniversary, I think, of the U.S. Army, but they're doing that to celebrate the dear leader at the same time. And he's been ramping up to this. You've seen tanks rolling into Washington, D.C. for this ostentatious display, as Trump is justifying cutting grandma's Social Security access under the auspices of trying to make the government more efficient and less wasteful. The numbers on this military display are as wasteful as it gets, and it's just to flatter his ego. Here he is talking about what's happening in L.A. During this speech at Fort Bragg.
And before going further, I want to say a few words about the situation in Los Angeles, California. Have you heard of the place? Where I've deployed thousands of National Guard troops and hundreds of Marines to protect federal law enforcement from the attacks of a vicious and violent mob. And some of the radical left, they say, oh, that's not nice. Well, if we didn't do it, there wouldn't be a Los Angeles. It'd be burning today, just like the houses were burning a number of months ago. Generations of Army heroes did not shed their blood on distant shores only to watch our country be destroyed by invasion and third world lawlessness here at home, like is happening in California. As Commander-in-Chief, I will not let that happen. It's never going to happen. What you're witnessing in California is a full-blown assault on peace, on public order, and on national sovereignty carried out by rioters bearing foreign flags with the aim of continuing a foreign invasion of our country. We're not going to let that happen. Remember, millions of people were allowed to come into our country totally unchecked and unvetted by stupid people or radical left people or sick people. But regardless, open border policy, the dumbest policy yet. I would say even dumber than men playing in women's sports, transgender for everyone.
Great. All right. There, he's got the through line with that.
Can I just say there's a joke?
Sure.
We don't have to play it, but there is a joke he makes a little later in that clip where he says, something about like, I forget what point he makes, and he asks if they agree with it.
Flag burning.
Oh, that's what it is.
Making it illegal to up to 1 year in prison, which he said on the campaign trail to burn the American flag. This has already been ruled on by the Supreme Court that it's a protected free speech expression.
Speaking of the American flag, Emma said all the nice stuff about, how it'd be nice to think better of our troops and stuff like that. Google Fort Bragg and ask yourself if you're surprised by this. And ask yourself if maybe the people who say we should be slashing the military, and maybe the founding fathers were right about a standing army. It's not compatible with democracy, which you just saw behind that guy.
And let's do 3 here, just to give people a sense of like, this is not an invasion. The National Guardsmen, they don't even have anything to do, and now police in LA are being reassigned to protect the National Guardsmen who are protecting federal buildings that are not under attack. This is a video taken by Erin Burnett, or at the very least published by Erin Burnett of CNN, showing what it actually looks like here. We'll talk over this a little, but you see the National Guardsmen in riot gear all lined up in a row outside this federal building, just kind of standing around. Burnett's caption says there's no protest here. They'll pan out a bit, but go ahead, Matt.
Mexico, the guns in Mexico for any so-called invasion, they would come from America.
Right.
This is actually a bone of contention. Our Supreme Court, unanimously, including the liberals, said that our gun manufacturers aren't responsible for, say, arming the cartels despite marketing to them the same way they said, they're liable for marketing towards Sandy Hook.
Right.
Even though the marketing is the exact same sort of thing.
All you see there is some explicit language criticizing Donald Trump, spray painted on the buildings. I didn't realize that vandalism was such a national concern that the National Guards have to be sent in. But the right wing got its marching orders. This was it's so obvious. Like, I wonder who they're actually speaking to directly, if it's a group or if it's someone in the Trump administration.
Stephen Miller.
Directly. It could be. Matt Walsh, Charlie Kirk, all tweeting out the same thing at the same time, basically yesterday, June 9th. Walsh and Kirk within an hour of one another.
Just copy paste.
Ban all third world immigration, Matt Walsh says, legal or illegal. There should be a moratorium on all immigration from the third world. We've reached our capacity. We cannot be the world's soup kitchen anymore. Charlie Kirk. It's time to ban
the world's soup kitchen, as if the people here that were at Home Depot aren't like building these people's houses.
Yep. For sub-minimum wage.
Can we have a little bit of time to play this news segment?
We do, but I just want to highlight like how, let's do that in a sec. It's time to ban third world immigration, legal or illegal. It's almost exactly word for word. He just put "it's" in front of it. We've reached our limit and we have huge cultural blah, blah, blah. Jack Posobiec. It's time to ban third world immigration, legal or illegal. Copy, paste, copy, paste. This is a coordinated propaganda outfit, and I want to emphasize this stuff. With the tech right, which is putting images, the most inflammatory images, including the burning cars, including the guy standing on the hood, that are not at all representative of the rest of the protests, and that's the worst they can get, by the way. They're putting them to the top of everybody's feed, and they're coordinating with right-wing influencers to manufacture consent that allows for this authoritarian crackdown. Go ahead, Matt.
People are right to be mad, and anything that you see that seems excessive in the streets is provoked by this absolute lunatic white supremacist policy that we're seeing. And this is a news story, just one of many. Like this Tom Homan saying, actually, they're rioting because we're taking rapists and drug traffickers is such a heinous smear against the entire people of Los Angeles or any of these immigrant communities. They're upset because they're taking their brothers and fathers and sisters and wives and husbands. Let's just play this.
An update tonight on a 9-year-old Torrance boy and his father who were deported to Honduras away from family and friends. Tonight, they are speaking out. KTLA's Lindsay Pena has more.
Martir Garcia Lara and his father, Martir Garcia Vanegas, are now back in Honduras after being deported from the U.S. just days ago. Now, in a small town, the 9-year-old is trying to get used to his new reality. He says,
I was scared to come here. I wanted to stay with my brother.
We first told you about Martir and his father after members of the Torrance Elementary PTA reached out to KTLA. Martir has attended classes there since the first grade, and members of the school community were concerned about what had happened to him and his family. The pair were detained and separated after attending an immigration status hearing in downtown LA back in late May. Federal officials say the father and son had been ordered to return to Honduras back in 2023, but remained. Martir's brother Kevin is still in the U.S., though.
He's grown now, but Kevin was with me my whole life. I want to see my friends again. I miss all my friends.
The elder Martir saying he had a feeling things would end up this way and believes
They're being cruel to people.
Now, maybe there's people that are listening to this, I hope not, that think that they would take this standing down if people in their lives had them completely severed from the people they grew up with and loved and sent to a foreign country. Maybe you would accept that standing down. I basically have a different view of humanity, that you view that as an unjust encroachment, that you'd send this kid and his dad away from their brother and friends to start a whole new life somewhere. What? Because Stephen Miller isn't happy with the fucking demographics. Because all in these images here about the Pasobi at Kirk or whatever, you know what's the first thing they say? We have a huge cultural thing. That's all it is. The educational stuff, no, we can deal with that. George H.W. Bush knew we can deal with that. We could educate, even undocumented kids can be in schools. Housing, who's building the housing? Are you kidding me? Financial, who do you think's... I mean, these are ridiculous, but it's ultimately because all these guys are white supremacists and they're in power right now.
I actually just got this book, and I believe that we've had this guest on before. The author of Hate Monger, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, and the White Nationalist Agenda, Jean Guerrero. I'm going to read it soon, actually, because there's some backstory into Stephen Miller I feel like hasn't been discussed enough, including the fact that he grew up in the LA area. And there were reports in Guerrero's book about how when he was in high school in Santa Monica, he would clash with the students there who were speaking Spanish, and he would tell them to speak only English at the time. His level of resentment towards immigrants, legal immigrants, goes back to his childhood. This is a very small man motivated by deep racism, anxiety, self and outward hatred, wherever it begins, chicken or the egg situation.
He's been disowned by his family, and yeah, the Vice did a video on that where he's saying, you know, make the, and everyone knew who the janitors were. Make the janitors pick up your trash, throw it on the ground. Who cares?
He was disowned by his family in part because he grew up in a Jewish household, and the Trump administration is so anti-Semitic, if I recall. So this is somebody who has a lot of cruelty in his heart. But this is why it's so important to back off even the concept of legal immigration as a framework for analyzing this moment. Because think about the word legal. Just think about it a little bit more deeply when you're trying to apply it to an action or a process of legal or illegal immigration. And then when you apply that to a human being and you put people's humanity within the context of outside of state acceptability, which is illegal, and inside it, then the state gets to define who is more human than the other person. And with a white supremacist fascistic administration in place, we see how this is manifesting in practice. AOC had a great point on Blue Sky. We can end with this. But I just want to show that, like, there's a way to respond to this that isn't capitulating to the right, like we're seeing from way too many Democrats. She writes, "It is 100% carrying water for the opposition to participate in this collective delusion that Democrats, for some reason, need to answer for every teen who throws a rock, rather than hold the Trump administration accountable for intentionally creating chaos and breaking the law to stoke violence. They are in charge. They are both stoking this violence and exaggerating any violence."
And I'd also say Democrats need to get their cops under control so they don't help provoke these and instigate these things into bigger problems like they've been doing. It's not just the National Guard being sent in, it's police departments that frankly, we haven't brought under control as they need to be.
It's a failure of liberal governance in cities, which is being exploited by the right now. But that's in part because liberal governance obviously preferable to right-wing governance. But it's had these failures where police departments have completely gone off the rails and are wagging the tail of Karen Bass as opposed to the other way around. And it's what makes this race here in New York City so important, because it's time that true left-wing leadership comes back to our cities, not this.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.